Hello there and welcome to the latest Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo. I'm your host, Joe Rimmer, joined on this Bank Holiday Monday by Paul Gorst. How are we, Paul?
Yes, you caught me sort of mid-coffee sip there. Yeah, I'm good. Very busy. Very busy.
Yeah, very busy. It might have been a quiet Monday, but it's not anymore, is it, Theo Squires?
No, it's not. We've got this horrible news that you're joining Bayern Munich.
So I've got a Bayern Munich jumper and a Bayern Munich t-shirt on, so I've gone double Bayern today. One trip to Munich.
That's two significant blows for us today.
Yeah. Do you know who would never abandon you?
NordVPN.
NordVPN, that's right. That's right. It was a great segue, wasn't it? And yeah, Nord, thank you once again for sponsoring this podcast, helping us do what we do. So to get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/bloodred, and our link gives you 4 months extra on a 2-year plan. There's no risk at all with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the podcast episode description box. That was all going so well.
That sounded good.
That stumble.
I reckon I'd struggle to say the link is in the podcast episode description box every episode. Do that so flawlessly.
Well, that wasn't flawless, but we gave it a good go. We are live on YouTube. We've already got some comments and some thoughts.
Wonder what they're about.
Coming in, yeah. Wonder what they're. Keep them coming in and do ask questions as we go along. I'm trying to grab them. Obviously, the chat goes quite quickly, so if I see some good questions, I'll copy and paste them and then put them to the guys. If you're listening elsewhere on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, please give us a like, subscribe, press the bell for notifications, give us some stars, all those nice things. And if you want to ask a question on email, feel free to drop me an email, joe.rimmer@reachplc.com, and we can put the questions to the guys in the next podcasts. But look, there's only one place to start, and there's only one thing to talk about really on today's pod. We'll touch upon the game a little bit later, but
forgot there was a game.
Yeah, let's just start. Trent Alexander-Arnold announcing the worst kept secret in football, perhaps, and his desire to depart Liverpool at the end of his contract on June 30th. Of course, give us your initial thoughts.
Yeah, to be honest, I think it'll take a while before I sort of land on somewhere. Really, it's a strange one, isn't it? It's one that we sort of knew was coming, but I mean, the way it's being executed has been very deliberate, very strategic. You know, Trent ensuring that it is him in front of the camera saying his goodbyes at 10 a.m, Bank Holiday Monday, all very regimented and, you know, everything was in place. It isn't necessarily something that's come out in external media or anything like that. It's, you know, he's always tried to do it on his terms, and I think he's probably done it as close to as is possible at the moment. I think maybe the news came out, didn't it, in Spain in the March international break, that Real Madrid felt that they were getting closer to getting their man, but, you know, being officially confirmed by the player, I suppose he'll be happy with how it's been handled. But I think for supporters now, I don't think there's any way to get away from how he's going to leave the club when you're talking about his legacy. You know, he could have been Steven Gerrard, he might very well be of Steve McManaman now, if you can sort of compare and contrast the two. He's been an absolutely unbelievable player for Liverpool for nearly 9 years now, actually, isn't it? He made his debut in October 2016, but sort of rose to prominence, didn't he, maybe like 2018 time. So best part of 7 or 8 years at the very least, he's won everything there is to win. You know, won a couple of League Cups, 2 Premier Leagues, the FA Cup, the Club World Cup, and of course the Champions League as well. So, you know, he's leaving as a hugely decorated homegrown star. And normally it would be a case of wishing him well, but when you're at Liverpool, you know, there's not that many places you leave to go and kick on. And I think, you know, when you sort of leave Liverpool, you often leave with a pat on the back because you're leaving to go further down the pecking order, if you like. And this is very much, you know, I think Real Madrid will see it as moving up the food chain, won't they? And they tend to get their man. So, yeah, it's tough for Liverpool supporters to take. And I can understand the frustration and the anger that will come as a result. And I think Trent understands that himself. He said pretty much as much to the club in the official interview today. But, yeah, it's just sad, really, that, you know, a superstar of the academy feels that, you know, he wants a fresh challenge elsewhere at such an exciting time.
That's it, isn't it? I suppose it's sad that, again, for our generation of Liverpool fans, you've grown up with the Gerrards who came through the academy and really, during his time, could have left numerous times,
Yeah.
and you probably would have understood if he'd left at some point, but didn't. Trent has come in, won everything, just won the Premier League, is part of a team that looks like could be going places, and yet has decided that his time at Liverpool's up. How do you feel, Theo? Your initial reaction?
It's what a disappointment, really. Like, it's been a great Liverpool career for Trent Alexander-Arnold. He is a Liverpool legend for all those honours that he's won, but it could have been so much more. He's only 26. His peak years are still ahead of him, and throughout his Liverpool career, it's been the Scouser in the team. This is him living the dream. He's playing for his boyhood team. He's winning the biggest honours. He is the poster boy of that side. For him to then, that narrative to change, now he wants to go and have that fresh challenge. It's just not what we've been hearing earlier in his career. And it's been a long time coming. Like, we've had the suspicion that he'd be going all season long, but now it's actually happening. Like, it was only when he was scoring against Leicester, or you see the celebrations after they win the title, every supporter's expecting him to go, but going, surely he'll change his mind now. You're hoping, because we've seen Steven Gerrard reject all those advances. This is his club. He wants to play for it for the entirety of his career. He wants to captain this team. He wants to win the league titles. He wants to win the Champions Leagues. And for whatever reason, it's not enough for Alexander-Arnold now. Obviously, he's in a very different situation because he'd won everything by the time he was, 22, 23. He doesn't have that elusive league title to chase throughout his career. He's already brought that back. And understand why maybe he does want to go and experience something new. But considering he was the poster boy, he was supposed to be the next Liverpool captain, someone who's going to take this club into the Arne Slot era and then beyond, to see it cut short after just one season, it's quite surreal.
Yeah. So how did it come to this goal, Steve? You know, you've just literally just before we come in here, hit publish on your long read on the process that led to his decision to leave, but just give us some of the broad strokes for anyone that not got a chance to read that yet.
Yeah,
Please do read it.
I think I don't think you can get away from the fact that the sort of transition that the club's been in the last maybe 2.5 years has impacted things. You know, going back to when FSG was sort of exploring their exit strategy, you know, gently and quietly, you know, around about November time, 2022. And then the subsequent departure of Julian Ward, and he was replaced by Jörg Schmacker, who was never really a proper sporting director in the sense. He was just there to sort of facilitate transfers for that transfer window, and then Jurgen Klopp announces that he's leaving, and there's a bit of a pause on proceedings, and, you know, FSG take the time to properly restructure the club with Michael Edwards essentially succeeding Mike Gordon, Richard Hughes coming on board as a sporting director, Julian Ward coming back on board, and FSG looking to sort of expand the parameters and explore what they can do with the sort of multi-club model. And I think all that has had a knock-on effect for the contract situations, really. You know, Mo Salah, Virgil van Dijk and Trent Alexander-Arnold. And I think the difference is, as while all three have dwindled down, 2 to 3 have always wanted to stay on Merseyside. You know, they're in the sort of twilight of their careers. And as Alexander-Arnold's contract has trickle down, you know, he sort of started to cast a glance at what might be on offer elsewhere. And Real Madrid have got this model, haven't they, where they bring some of the biggest players in the world to the club on free transfers. You know, Kylian Mbappe, when was it, last summer they've done that with him. David Alaba did it with him, didn't he? I think Antonio Rudiger. So it's a sort of well-worn model that they've got. And Trent fits in perfectly, really, at the age of 26. And, you know, he's a very ambitious character. It's not necessarily ambition in terms of just football trophies and medals and all that sort of stuff. You know, we want to become a big star in terms of being on billboards, you know, being, you know, the face of fashion brands and big sort of global brands. And, you know, there's not many clubs who can do that better for you than Real Madrid. So it's all sort of rolled into one, really, in a bit of a perfect storm. And, you know, Richard Hughes has done his best. I think he's done a brilliant job in terms of getting Salah and Van Dijk tied down to 2-year contract extensions. But when Real Madrid come calling, invariably players want to go, don't they? So, yeah, Real Madrid have their man. And it's sad that it's come to this from Liverpool's perspective. But there wasn't a whole lot the club could have done, really.
I find it quite frustrating from a Liverpool perspective in terms of there's going to be a lot of criticism of Trent. But the club, I mean, the power vacuum at the top of the club, 18 months ago or so. It shouldn't have. They should have looked at this, and FSG always get credit and criticism for being sort of strict businessmen who only really spend what the club earns, and they're very good at the business side of things, but perhaps they're not so emotional about they're not going to put loads and loads of money in for emotional reasons is what I mean. But if they had just looked at Trent as an asset, they're losing £100 million asset for nothing. And I find it bizarre that they could allow anyone at Liverpool could have allowed a power vacuum. Did they take him for granted? Is this what's happened in terms of that they've got a year left, 2 years left, and gone, well, Trent will sign, he's a local lad, and that hasn't happened? Because I think that's really, really poor from whoever has remained at the club. I know there's been change, but for example, the summer Schmadtke is there. They should have said, look, whether it's Jörg Schmadtke or someone else at the club needs to sit down and we need to get this sorted. We at least need to get the ball rolling on this. Because I think it's been quite unfair to Richard Hughes to leave him. He's come in.
It's an unbelievable hospital pass for Hughes, and to be fair, he's got 2 of the 3 done, hasn't he? But no, you're right. When the year Schmadtke come in, he still has 2 years left on his contract, Trent. Was there a feeling inside the club or inside the ownership group of taking him for granted? Like you say, he's the homegrown lad, he'll stay. We won't have any issues there. And Real Madrid have started to quietly drip feed this idea that you can come to us and be a star. And I think the alarm bells for supporters started ringing when, well, he's sort of dodged most media requests all year, hasn't he? Which hasn't helped. But when he did the Sky thing, was it with Harriet Pryor, wasn't it? Where it was meant to be pretty sort of quite jovial and relaxed and just a bit of a nice feature of what would you like to do. And he ends up saying that he'd rather win the Ballon d'Or than win the Champions League with Liverpool. And I think a lot of supporters didn't react too kindly to that. And I think that's when the alarm bells really started to sound, and that was probably around about October time. So it's not something that's immediately happened out the blue, and I think there's no real surprise that we've had this announcement this morning, but it doesn't make it any less or any easier to digest, I suppose, from a supporter's perspective.
For me, it depends how it all did unfold behind the scenes in terms of that power vacuum, because you could look at it when Liverpool don't qualify for the Champions League. Maybe Trent doesn't want to sign then. He wants to see what happens next. He wants to see if there's that stability. Then you've got Jurgen Klopp stepping down, and it's the same thing again. And from Liverpool's point of view, maybe they just want it to be really fair. We're not going to try and get people to sign new contracts when we don't know if the manager's staying, we don't know who the new manager's going to be. They want it all to be very open on this is the situation at the club and wait for it to be unfold. If
that's the case, that'd be slightly too nice, isn't it? Again, take it down to a business decision. He's worth £100 million on a club that does generate what they earn and spend what they earn. You're allowing that £100 million to just walk out the door for nothing.
Yeah.
I just don't think there's room for sentiment.
You could probably then take it back to when he signed the last contract, because it was 4 years, whereas Robertson got 5.
Yeah.
And we're saying if he goes to Real Madrid, he's getting a 6-year deal. That'll take him until he's 32.
That's
Fabinho, Van Dijk,
strikes me as very
Alisson
odd.
was 6 years. They were all, and he was specifically 4, which he knew would have taken him to before his 27th birthday.
Because I remember I said at the time, well, that's because when you renegotiate, he's going to be in that position where he's going to be one of the highest earners in the club. Bring it to the table sooner, because his status is going to be so important. But those conversations, they never materialised into anything. So you're now in this position where he can just go on a free transfer and go to Real Madrid. He's not even going to be one of their highest earners, is he? He's going to get the big signing on fee, which is part of the big appeal for these free transfers. Because rather than give a club 100 million, you can give the player half of that, and it's still massive money for them. But it's just very political behind the scenes how it's all unfolded.
The information we've got is that Liverpool did make him several offers and tried to make him one of the highest paid fullbacks in world football, and his mind was already made up. His heart was set on this move to Real Madrid, and he told Slot in March, and you made a good point before we come on air, that was when this sort of news broke in Spain, wasn't it? Real Madrid felt more confident than ever, without a whole lot of detail into those reports. If you look at it at the time, it was almost just Real Madrid feel they can get him without saying exactly why, and it turns out that he'd already told Arne Slot that Real Madrid were going to be the one for him. There was obviously no mention of them on the video or anything like that, and I think we'll have to wait before all of that becomes a bit more official, and he will be unveiled at the Bernabeu and all that sort of stuff. But
have to be quick when you got the Club World Cup before his contract's even up.
Well, yeah. I mean, there is that, isn't there? I think so. So that takes place in June, doesn't it? Before his contract expires, which is officially June the 30th. So maybe he won't be involved in that, but he is obviously going to go to Real Madrid. So yeah, it's just a shame the way it's played out, really. But I do think there is an element of maybe taking him for granted. Sort of 2.5 years back, and expecting Richie Hughes to get all three over the line was probably asking a bit too much.
Yeah, I feel like there's definitely a conscious effort from Trent and his camp to make him into this bit more of a glamour player. Like you say, all these sponsorship deals, talking about, look, the comments won't take this very well, but I'm a big believer that I just don't think he deserves that much criticism. I think it's disappointing, absolutely. It's rubbish, absolutely, but he's achieved a great deal with Liverpool, and he's helped deliver supporters' wildest dreams, including one of the greatest moments in Liverpool history against Barcelona. He should leave. I'm not necessarily people have to cheer and whoop and clap, but I don't really like anyone booing him and some of the abuse that goes his way. But for all that, I haven't really didn't like the Ballon d'Or stuff. I think any player who's talking about winning the Ballon d'Or, if you go back to the interview, if he didn't want to say something like, I want to win another Premier League with Liverpool to sort of commit his future to Liverpool, he could have just said, I want to always be in the conversation for the biggest prizes, Champions Leagues.
Well, the Champions League one, he didn't have to say Liverpool. He could have just said, "Would just win
I
another
want to
Champions League."
Win another Champions League. Exactly. He didn't have to say Ballon d'Or. If he really does feel like, I want to win a Ballon d'Or, I mean, it just feels
he's not winning that. Real Madrid win the Champions League. It's going to Mbappe. It's going to Bellingham. It's going to Vinicius Junior. It's not going to the right back.
I mean, Michael Owen won a Ballon d'Or. I don't necessarily think it's changed the way people remember him. I don't think there's any glamour around Michael Owen. It's the thing you win, and if he's part of a great team, he might be in the conversation. But if that's what drives him, that's a bit of a shame. But yeah, how do you think his reception will be then in the next couple of weeks?
I think it'll still be supportive, actually. I think the reception he got at Leicester when he come off the bench, and then obviously he wins them the game. I think that was quite instructive as to how it all might play out when the news did eventually come. And he was serenaded in the same way everyone else was, wasn't he, on Sunday? Not this Sunday, the previous one when Liverpool won the league. So, still think it'll be generally more positive than negative. I think there's a sort of vocal minority, isn't there, online, who are calling him this, that, and the other. He's a lizard. He's a rat. Whatever.
When did lizards become the I feel sorry for lizards everywhere.
When did they rats as like the vermin of choice? Yeah.
Well, rats, it comes with the territory, doesn't it? If you're a rat, you're down there. You're in the gutter, aren't you?
Yeah, rats.
But lizards, what have lizards ever done to anyone?
Snakes are getting forgotten here as well.
I know. Snakes are getting an easy ride.
Get away with murder snakes.
They've just put it on their rival reptiles.
Yeah, I mean,
they've done well to shift the focus there, really, on these snakes. After decades of poor PR.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think there will be a vocal minority calling him various insults.
Is a chameleon a lizard?
I think so, yeah.
Because if it is, I like chameleons.
But chameleons are known for famously changing their colours.
So maybe, hang on, the sense I got.
Has Trent shown his true colours today?
He could have done. Are chameleons lizards?
So, but I still think it'll be largely supportive inside the ground. We'll obviously find out on Sunday, but I'm not expecting any sort of adverse reaction from the supporters, and I certainly don't think Arne Slot is going to cut his nose off to spite his face and relegate him to the under-23s or the under-21s for the rest of the season, which a few people have suggested as well.
Yeah. So they don't have any games to start.
Well, there is that.
Completely pointless.
Organise it friendly and put them in.
Yeah, I mean, but where do you stand on it? What do you think the reception could be, should be?
I don't think it'll be as warm as he'd like it to be, but he's aware of that himself. Everything he said, whether it was the interview with the club, the video he put out, or the tweet, he knows people are not going to be happy and people are going to have things to say. It's part of the reason why he's kept it quiet all season long. And we look to those title celebrations, he was sheepish when he was getting serenaded by the cop. It was Curtis Jones who pushed him in front of that. Yeah. It was similar at Leicester when it was Virgil van Dijk telling him to get that reception from them, because he was expecting a bit of a backlash. He knows what was coming, but the Anfield crowd is different to what we see on social media. Darwin Núñez is a great example of that. If you just listen to social media, you think everyone hates him, he's a rubbish striker. But every single time we're at Anfield, his name's been chanted every time he does anything, just chasing a ball down into the corner or something. So there is a lot of support there. And we've seen so many players in recent years go on free transfers after winning everything with Liverpool. They've got a really nice reception. Is it just?
This is slightly different, though, isn't it?
It is a bit different, but it's only different because he's Scouse. Like, say it was Harvey Elliott going at the end of his contract, and if his career had been like Trent's, he hadn't just been bit part, then are you more forgiving of Harvey Elliott?
I do think there's a difference, though. Like I say, you know, when the likes of Gini Wijnaldum are leaving and Naby Keita, Milner, whoever it may be, there's been a few, haven't there, over the last few years. I think there's always been an acceptance that they're just almost going to drop down a level or two, and you know you've only got to look at the clubs that they've subsequently joined to see that that's the case. And Liverpool have flourished in all of their absences, but this one feels a bit more of a sucker punch because he's going during his peak to a team who have beaten Liverpool twice, haven't they, in the Champions League finals in the last 5 years? So it's 5 years, it's probably 6 or 7 now, isn't it? So I can see why this one is slightly different to, you know, giving a farewell to a Thiago or whatever it may be.
Wolves76 in the comments says, I respect his decision. I would never consider being negative about him, but he will never be a Liverpool legend once you leave the club in your prime by running down your contract. And that's kind of where I sort of sit with him now. I think, just read Carragher's column in the Telegraph, and I think he made a good point about, he compared him to Beckham in the United team and said Scholes, Giggs, they will be legends, but Beckham will be a great, who is well liked, but thought of slightly differently. And I know Beckham didn't force it.
But Beckham's more of a sort of footballs, you know. And
I think Trent wants to be that, doesn't he? He wants to be a football icon rather than just a Liverpool icon. And he has to accept that what comes with that is a lack of love, maybe from any one club, but certainly from the club.
But then Beckham is loved by United now. He's loved by all his clubs, isn't he? In those years, because it's gone past that, they didn't want to see him go, but they still respected it. I suppose because of how it went with like Ferguson kicking the boot.
He didn't necessarily force his way out.
No,
but he's definitely not loved. He'll never be loved like those players who spent their careers
Trent, when
there.
He came through, he's always been put on that pedestal, isn't it? If you stay for your whole career, you become Liverpool captain, you win all these prizes, you're going to be up there with Steven Gerrard. If he'd stayed this entire career, avoided serious injury, he could have been chasing down that appearance record, the trophy hauls. He would have been up there with like a Phil Neal or something like that. But you do then take him off that now because he's going at his peak like a Steve McManaman. But he's still achieved so much more than those players because he's won these biggest honours. And like, let's be honest, that's a hell of a thing to put on a young player. And you can be our next Steven Gerrard. Like, he's the greatest player in Liverpool's history. It says a lot about Trent's mentality that has never been this weight on his back, that he's just accepted it and risen to it time and time again.
I won't have any rewriting of his abilities either. You know, I think he's an extraordinary fullback who's reinvented what being a fullback is about. He will not be replaced because he's far too good. And that's not a knock on anyone else. Conor Bradley, I think, will bring a different style to it. But I think Liverpool will be a poorer team.
100%. Yeah, I mean, you don't need to see in the Carabao Cup final to see what a huge absence, what a huge loss he is. Every time the ball got shuffled out to Jarrell Kwanzaa, who did okay in the final, but he's a centre back playing out of position. You know, there was no concern from Newcastle. It was coming back in field, or it was going 5 yards down the line to Mo Salah with his back to goal. When Trent gets the ball, it's the chance. You know, supporters, journalists, people in the ground are on the edge of the seat as soon as he gets the ball because you think, well, where's he going to put this? And he can basically play it wherever he wants. And I think there will be some rewriting of history now, or at least an attempt to, from maybe some Liverpool fans who'll try and force home that he's actually not as good as what most people have said for years, which will be nonsense. And I also think there'll be a narrative from external people, you know, the likes of Gary Neville and whoever else who've criticised them till the cows come home in recent years, and all of a sudden now they will just quietly soften their stance on his shortcomings and say, oh, what a player this lad is, going to Real Madrid. So there will be some rewriting on both sides, really, but I think, the thing that I'm slightly concerned of from Trent's perspective is he can go to Real Madrid and he can win 2 Champions Leagues and 4 La Ligas, or whatever his honour list looks like at the end of his career. But when his career is over, and it's only short, he's going to be possibly over inside of the next 10 years. He won't get that respect and admiration and love that the likes of Steven Gerrard does, and Jamie Carragher. These players who stayed for their entire careers, pretty much. I know Gerrard went to LA Galaxy, but wasn't necessarily a divisive move, was it? So that's my concern for him. It's a short career, and you've got to make the absolute most of it. But you're a long time retired, and when he is retired, does he get a cold shoulder in the way that Michael Owen or Steve McManaman does?
I guess there's no one you can compare it to, because when Liverpool have lost players before, when the peak years were still ahead of them, like Xavi Alonso, Fernando Torres, granted the injuries there, but Luis Suarez, they weren't in the position they're in now. It's like when you've got a side that are winning Premier League titles, can go for the Champions League, it's like that should be enough, and it is for most players. But Trent is unique, and winning another Premier League and a Champions League with Liverpool clearly isn't enough for him. He's already achieved all that. He wants that fresh challenge, and that's taken him to Real Madrid. Obviously, the side who are probably best placed to win multiple Champions Leagues in the future for him, can go and win a Club World Cup if he this summer, if he gets signed off before that end of the contract. But yeah, there is no one you can really compare him to in Liverpool's past, because no one has been in that situation before.
Yeah, I think he just has to accept that. I understand. I think, I get why people would want to go and experience a different culture, a different style of play, try and win over a new set of fans. But the flip side of that is you don't retain the absolute love and affection.
Yeah, that's the trade-off, isn't it? And he's obviously fine with that being the case. I don't think he's under any illusions that he's going to be, welcomed off, sort of riding off into the sunset with everyone giving him huge pats on the back. I think he knows it will be controversial and decisive and contentious, but he's had the best part of a year to make peace with that, I guess.
It's the entire football world, isn't it? That's what he's prioritising over the Liverpool fan base's feeling. Like, if all the footballing world are looking at him going, here's the best right back in the world, you're not too fussed maybe if you're getting a few dirty looks from Liverpool supporters. I've thought it goes back to the last 2 international tournaments with England, where you have him in midfield and he's the scapegoat, and then the one before where he's not even getting a look in. He gets so much scrutiny, people writing him off, saying he can't defend. It's like, well, I've won everything there is to win at Liverpool, and that still isn't enough. So maybe that is part of the reason why he feels he needs to go somewhere else, go and do it somewhere else to show it's not just Liverpool building a team around him, because Real Madrid aren't going to build the team around him. But if he can go there, be a star player, win Champions League titles again, it will change that narrative with people that have been criticising him for all these years, when Liverpool have been the supporters loudest backing him in the corner.
He's a different type of character to Steven Gerrard. There's always the comparisons, isn't there? But Gerrard was a bit of an introvert and almost an overthinker at times. I think if you read his book around the sort of Chelsea interest, there was a lot of soul searching, a lot of sort of digging deep and realising, he couldn't quite force his way through and make the move, and it was all very sort of inner turmoil happening all the time at every turn for Steven Gerrard, whereas Alexander-Arnold maybe has a little bit thicker skin and a bit more confident that he can go and make this move and almost shut out the noise of Liverpool supporters who don't particularly find it palatable. So, he's obviously, feels he is equipped to go and do that, whereas Gerrard maybe thought better of it. And, like he said, any trophy that you win with Liverpool is, worth 10 times more than one that he could have won anywhere else.
Can I ask you both, do you think it would have made a difference if he'd have been leaving this summer with Liverpool making 120 million on him?
Yeah.
Would have made a difference?
Yeah.
You think people would be more accepting of it?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. Because then at least it's something you can use to rebuild for the future.
So Liverpool are still champions, but they get a
All the
transfer fee
same
for him.
scenario, but he asked to leave the club and they get 120 odd
Well,
million.
look how Sadio Mane left in that sense. Like, he was celebrated still, wasn't he? He said some weird things in the week building up to that Champions League final, raising your eyebrows at the time. And then it turns out, oh yeah, he wants to go and he's excited for that. It's like, well, Liverpool fans aren't going to be excited that you want to leave. But he's still celebrated as this club icon, legend, whatever you want to call him. They went out and did the farewell interview, didn't they? The club did with him, maybe on Bayern's pre-season tour or something. he avoided quite a lot of backlash that you thought would have come his way, and Liverpool made a profit on him. So maybe it's as simple as that.
I couldn't disagree more.
Really?
I think because it would have been so ugly, so messy. He probably would have, because Liverpool would have said no immediately, wouldn't they? They wouldn't have. They're not.
So
they're
he
not
would have had to rock
he would
the
have
boat.
had to have rocked the boat. He would have had to put a transfer request in.
I don't think that's how it
exactly
works.
the
Liverpool
same.
now, though.
Exactly the same thing.
If a
happened
player
with
goes to
Coutinho.
Liverpool and say they don't want to stay, they want to go. Liverpool usually, okay, we can't persuade you, we will cash in. Like Coutinho, yeah, it was a bit messy.
I suppose if his contract was running down, but I'm just saying if it was all normal circumstances, Coutinho had to basically force his way out and upset a lot of people. I mean, don't forget, he didn't play in a few games, did he, towards the end of his time, did he? And in the summer, he had a back injury. That overshadowed things. And there was a lot of vitriol towards Coutinho when he left. And he's a Brazilian lad who was going to Barcelona. I just don't see... This is my biggest frustration with it. I think the idea that because Trent is leaving on a free, as if people would have been more accepting if he'd have forced his way out for a transfer fee. It's the act of leaving that has upset people, not how much he goes for.
Yeah, no, I get that, but I do think a transfer fee would help sort of reinvest because Liverpool aren't necessarily a club who can...
It's one less stick to beat him with.
Yeah.
But I think the extra stick to beat him with... He's got a little bit of mitigation here, hasn't he? In the sense that Liverpool should have moved quicker. Liverpool should have got this done a year ago. And Liverpool do deserve some criticism, I think, for allowing this to happen with one of their star players.
But then maybe he didn't want to a year ago. If it was one of the first things Richard Hughes was tasked with, and he's clearly it's not enough being at Liverpool. He wants to move on.
But before then, we know now, don't we, that once you've got a year left on a contract, you should be renegotiating contracts if you want to keep a player. 2 years out is minimum, isn't it? I remember this goes back to Owen. With Owen, they had to sell Owen for $8 million because he basically made clear he wasn't going to sell and then wasn't going to sign. And then Liverpool had to make a decision. Liverpool could have sold Trent for a fee in January. It wouldn't have made any difference. People wouldn't have been happy about it. So I just think...
This is what I was saying earlier. Well, you go last year. Well, Klopp's left. So you give it that year to see what happens. The year before, they don't qualify for the Champions League. They could try and tie him down 2 years ago. But why would he want to if there's no guarantee that they are going to get back in the Champions League?
I also think he would have been fully within his rights as well as to see how the new era was shaping up, because Liverpool could have regressed and could have been fighting for top 4 place as a minimum. And maybe he'd have thought, another season after Champions League, can't really be doing this as I approach my peak years. But as the season's gone on, it's become more and more clear that, this is a Liverpool squad and I'm coach who are going places, as you say, and, theoretically that could have made it easier for him to have signed on and committed his peak years to the club, but he feels otherwise.
If he'd have left 2 years ago when they're not in the Champions League, wouldn't he have been accused of abandoning ship when they needed all the help they could get back in there?
Yeah,
he's leaving the club in the best possible shape. And I'm not sitting here, I don't like certain things that have happened this year. I've said before, I hate all the cryptic stuff, all that Ballon d'Or nonsense and the shushing of fans and against West Ham. I think it only fuels speculation and makes the situation worse. But I think this narrative that if he'd have left for a fee is just, to me, that people don't like that he's leaving, and they wouldn't have accepted whichever way he'd have decided to depart the club. The fee thing just, I don't think it would have made a difference. People would have been angry either way, which I understand. But I think he's accepted that, hasn't he, as a person? He's gone, right, well, I'm not going to be a Liverpool legend, but I could be a football legend, which is his
then with the fee, Coutinho goes, they go and sign Van Dijk, Alisson, and that's what's built all this success.
Yeah, but at the time, no one was going, we might sign 3 players, it'd be fine.
No, but it still gave them the tools to do that.
I'm not disputing it would have been better. Of course it would have been better. I'm not saying that if they'd got a penny for him, it would have been better than nothing. I'm just saying that the reaction to him leaving, I don't think would have been different had they got a fee for him.
The question is what do Liverpool do now? Did he put the trust in Conor Bradley?
I had that written down.
Sorry. No, we're going to come on to that.
Yeah. You do the podcast if you want, of course. I'll leave. On a free.
You're jumping ship to buy him, aren't you?
Yeah, that's it. I'm going to do the buying.
Celebrating a title for them as well, aren't you?
Yeah. Go on. Tell us what happens next then, since you're running the show now.
Well, did he put the trust in Conor Bradley? Has he proven that he's A, good enough, Possibly. Has he proven that he's be durable enough to play 50 times a season for Liverpool? That's the major question mark. There's going to be a creativity shortfall, isn't it? And Liverpool needs to find a way to get that redressed in some way. Did he go for a different profile of number 10? There's not a fullback who can do what Trent does really on the ball, so it's going to be difficult to replace that like for like. So they're going to have to get a little bit creative, I think. I'm not really sure what that looks like. My
biggest fear, Theo, is I would immediately give Bradley the chance, because I think Bradley's a really good player. He's a very different player. But and even yesterday, I thought when he came on, he caused Chelsea a lot of problems. He's very direct, isn't he? And he gets the byline and pulls things back. He's never going to play passes the way Trent did, and he's probably not going to put crosses from deep the way Trent could do. But he's a really strong runner. It's just his injury record over the last couple of seasons. You need someone who's consistent enough, don't you, there? You don't want to be relying on Quansah or Joe Gomez every other week to play right back, because you lose so much when your fullbacks aren't giving you something in the final third. So how do you think that they get around that?
It's made the transfer window a lot trickier now, because Liverpool already needed a centre forward. They already needed a left back. And now you're saying a right back too. You can make the argument then you need the number 10, like Gorsty said, or a more creative, deeper midfielder, so you can get that creativity back into the team. But then it's just seeing what is the best. They can't just go and spend, say, 40, 50 million on Frimpong, the same amount on Kirkes, 100 whatever on a striker, be it Isak or someone else. It's just going to become too much. And then if players go like, I don't know, Diaz, Nunes, Jota, you can go through the squad. So many players could go. They're leaving themselves with so much to do. So maybe for a year, you see what Bradley can do. You give Joe Gomez or Quansah that chance. Calvin Ramsey's coming back. Maybe he has a good pre-season. I'm not going to say he's going to prove himself there. Or you look for someone who's going to be more, I don't know, a cut price option this summer, who can do a job at centre-back as well. This just seems, now Trent's going and they haven't got the transfer fee, there's so much room to do. When you've got Conor Bradley there, it shouldn't be a priority. But that just depends who's available.
That's a huge frustration for me about the Trent situation though as well, that Liverpool are in a pretty good position to just strengthen, and now they've got a position that, like Theo says, they don't really now have the cash to fix, but it's a problem, isn't it? I still think I'd prioritise forward, left back and other areas, but what would you do?
Yeah, no, I would. Number 9 would be the absolute number one thing on my to-do list this summer. I've said it for a while. And it's quite exciting, for us journalists covering it, for fans waiting to see who might be the one who gets the nod, in terms of bringing in a big all-purpose leader of the line for the next few years. So that's the one for me. Left back is an issue that needs looking at. I don't think there's any... I think the criticism of Robertson has been over the top at times this season. But I think bringing in someone like a Kirkes, who's 10 years younger than him, and sort of looking to blood him in gently as the season goes on, I think that'd be a nice way to sort of do that. But the right back situation is the one, isn't it? In terms of, I think Conor Bradley is showing enough signs that he could be a real serious option for Liverpool. It's just he's missed a lot of football and he's a young player. So, where do you get that creativity back in the team? Because, like I said, there's not too many right backs out there like Trent. Frimpong's been linked, hasn't he? Jeremy Frimpong. There's a few others. Denzel Dumfries is someone who always looks the part whenever I see him play. Not sure how old he is, but it's something it's just another headache for Liverpool's recruitment team, isn't it? But I guess at least they've known now for at least sort of 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So the planning and the fact that they've won the title with a month to spare, Arne Slot was saying on Friday that does help in terms of speaking to Richard Hughes and a bit more, in depth than he previously had been able to. So Liverpool know what needs to be looked at and have the time and space to do it.
I still think there's a bright future in the sense that if they do change their style a little bit, hopefully Bradley can stay fit and they can have a bit more of a traditional style with I thought he caused loads of problems yesterday, and that is Bradley's style, isn't it? To sort of maraud forward and try and get to the byline and pull crosses back.
And they've still got
been a goal threat
Salah getting loads of assists as well. It's not a case of Trent does all the work, Salah then just plays the final pass.
It's a good point. Salah's evolution has certainly helped in that regard, hasn't it? As a player. Okay. quickly want to ask you both, where does this rank in terms of the worst Liverpool exits? In terms of the most hurtful? Does it go right up there?
I don't think it does because he's going out as a Premier League champion. Like Liverpool was still going into the summer in a really good place. Yeah, it stings, but you can still get that excitement to make it something new. As we've just said there, it could be a change of style. It's given Conor Bradley an opportunity, and he still won everything there is to win with Liverpool. It's that missed opportunity of he could have achieved more because his peak years are still ahead of him, but it doesn't hurt as much as some of the others. Like Fernando Torres is probably still the main one, isn't it?
Michael Owen, for me, just because Real Madrid took the mickey, didn't they, and got him for a pittance. Just as Rafa Benitez was coming in and needed his best players around to try and build, and then you lose your best striker and you have to replace him, and Liverpool didn't really replace him for 3 years until Torres come in. Torres was a tough one to take because Liverpool were really at a low ebb in January 2011. And when Suarez left
would have
as well,
been the year before.
Suarez was almost just...
Yeah, Suarez.
He feels he's done all he can, and now he's off. Liverpool got an incredible fee for him. They just squandered it. So, for me, I'd probably still say Owen and then Torres. So, Trent might sneak in number 3, but I think probably Suarez.
Sterling's up there as well, actually, isn't he? Raheem Sterling.
Yeah. I mean, that was just handled
Poorly by everyone.
Yeah. And he threatened him not to go on the tour. And I mean, another time when Liverpool were struggling, really, wasn't it? At a low ebb, and he goes off to Man City.
Suarez and Alonso for me, both for similar reasons. They'd finished second, hadn't they? And obviously Suarez been the spearhead of that. But I thought Alonso, the year that Liverpool finished second in 2009, had been like a key man in that and also a really high profile player who was then going, I'm going to go on to a club with more chance of success. The same with Suarez, and it just kind of felt like all the good work Liverpool had done to get to second had been undone, and they would have to start building again. And so it proved both times around. Whereas at least this time you think, well, I don't necessarily think Liverpool are going to have to do loads and loads of work. I think they will miss Trent in certain ways, but I think there are easier ways. I still think Van Dijk or Salah leaving would have been so much harder to...
It's how you replace them, isn't it? You know, you look at Alonso and they didn't replace him. They brought in Aquilani. It was an unmitigated disaster, wasn't it? Torres was replaced by Suarez, not officially, but he basically just took over the mantle as the talisman, didn't he? And you moved on. But they didn't replace Michael Owen for 3 years.
Yeah.
They certainly didn't replace Suarez. I don't think they ever did, really. So it's all about getting the right replacements in. And Liverpool perhaps have proven that the best way to do that is by sort of looking elsewhere in the team, because the like-for-like replacements for these big stars over the last sort of 15, 20 years have not cut the mustard, have they? Whereas when they got rid of Coutinho, they got Alisson and then Van Dijk. They got Van Dijk and then Alisson a few months later, and then that completely transformed the fortunes, didn't it?
And they changed the way they played, didn't they?
Yeah.
That they went from using Coutinho to their midfield being a lot more functional, and the front three becoming the success, didn't it? So I think, again, if they tweak it a little bit and use this as a chance to evolve rather than reset, I think they'd be okay.
Even a Sterling, he went for, 45, 50 million in 2015. They didn't really bring in a similar sort of speedy winger who could play in a few positions. Firmino and Benteke wasn't it? It was a bit of a awkward compromise between the two warring factions in the recruitment at the time. Brendan Rodgers and the transfer committee, as they were then known. So, yeah, some checkered history, really, for Liverpool in terms of replacing big stars. So this one, you've got to get right.
It's probably harder as well, where there is no right back like him. But then you look at the teams, you've either got your Arsenals that play Timber, Ben White, more centre-backs there, or the ones that play your Frimpongs, your Dumfries, where they're wing-backs, they're in a back three, back five. There is no one who really does it in that four that stands out, like maybe Gusto at Chelsea. But then that's not someone you can say, he's an elite player, you want him at Liverpool. It's not that obvious position where you can go and recruit someone world-class. Whereas at least on the other flank, there's so many names we've seen over the season. We go, yeah, he could be a shout, whether it's Kirkers, Robinson if he was a bit younger, Ait Nouri at Wolves. There's so many that have come up.
Yeah. And they're just Premier League players as well, isn't they? So, question for you: You're our homegrown star, aren't you? Which is ironic since we brought him through the Bolton Academy.
That's it. Yeah.
With Keller and Trent both set to leave, does that mean we need to look for more home-based players such as Liam Delap rather than foreign players? And that's from Kevin Richards.
It's
Thank you, Kevin.
an interesting one because in the next couple of years they've got so many good players that are coming through that are going to become of age, and they've still got a number of under-21s players, so they don't necessarily need that full 25-man squad when you've got so many younger players filling it up, still making up the numbers. Because like Elliot is still an under-21 player this year. I think Bradley
Still.
Wow. Next year I think he goes into the squad properly. But it's then that balancing act. It will only become an issue if Elliot goes as well. Obviously, then he was like Phillips, Reece Williams, all these players. But that's never been an issue for Liverpool because the 21s list has been able to balance it. They've still got like Jayden Danns there, Stefan Bisetic. They are going to need a few in the ranks, but it just depends because they've got all the club-trained ones, so they don't necessarily need to really panic. Like last year was a big change for them because they had those players coming through. They could still have those numbers without naming the full squad, whereas a couple of years before that we were going, yeah, they probably need to sign a couple here. They managed to counter it quite well.
We're going to have to wrap this up in a second, Ghosty, but you were obviously at Stamford Bridge yesterday. Liverpool lost 3-1 at Chelsea, but then Ibrahim Konate was dancing in front of the away fans at the end. It was quite surreal, wasn't it? But a lot of those fringe players that Theo's just touched upon did get a chance in that game. Did any of them take it? Where do you think they stand after that?
No, I wouldn't say any of them took it really. I thought Jarell Kwanzaa had a tough afternoon. First time playing centre-back in the Premier League since Ipswich. Elliott didn't really do it. Endo was probably the best of the bunch, but yeah, I don't think anyone took the chances really. And Jota was one of the 6 changes, wasn't he? I thought he really struggled. But, you can't really be too critical of a team who lost and still find themselves 15 points clear of Arsenal and they're still Premier League champions. And I think the supporters just enjoyed the day at Stamford Bridge, and that is their prerogative. So they're going to do that on Sunday against Arsenal, then against Brighton, and then we've got Crystal Palace, which is going to be similar to the Tottenham scenes all over again. There's
always going to be an element of going through the motions a bit. I remember when they won it in 2020, they had a bit of a drop, but they got beat 4-1 by City, didn't they? It just felt like they took their eye off the ball a little bit afterwards. That's normal, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Like that pressure's not on you anymore. It must be the relief of we've won the league and you can relax a little bit. It was always going to be hard when you make that number of changes because it's not as though Slot has rotated regularly throughout the year. Like I was saying, the first start in the league for Elliott, for Endo, it's a big ask for them to suddenly be up to pace.
Especially when you make a bad start like they did.
Yeah, they made a bad start. It's midfield. How often has that 3 played together before? Never mind in a Premier League game. You probably have League Cup or something, but it's a completely different game for them. And then you have the 2 changes in the defence as well. I think it's maybe just a little bit too much of an ask for him. And Chelsea, obviously, still going for top 4. They've got to try and qualify for the Champions League as well. Granted, they've got the European semi-final, but you prioritise the top 4 in their situation. It's never going to be an easy day, and Liverpool fans just enjoyed it. Van Dijk's celebration, I think, was quite telling. The fact that he's still got a beaming face on him because he scored when they're losing.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting, wasn't it? Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just one of those, you shrug it off, don't you? Doesn't matter. Still 15 points clear, still champions. Happy days. It would just be a bit different against Arsenal and Palace. Like you want to think they'll go for a stronger 11 in those games. It's in front of the fans. You want to send a statement by beating Arsenal, really sticking the knife in, and then have a true celebration when you get your hands on that trophy.
I think that's big, isn't it? You really want to beat Arsenal next week, and really show who was the... I mean, we already know, but just to
show why,
underline who the team is.
Yeah, and I think you'll bring in, the likes of McAllister and Gravenberch, who didn't even go, did he? Luis Diaz again. So, yeah, it's it's not a particularly big game, but you still want to see Liverpool shake off Sunday and almost the ideal team to do it against. Arsenal coming to town, and they had that title challenge up until whenever you want to say it really fell away. But yeah, I think be a good one to bounce back really at Anfield.
I'm going to put you on the spot before the end. Nord Person of the Week.
Ooh,
I know who it is. It's already decided, but you can.
Oh right, okay. Trying to think.
For chartbeat reasons, it's Trent. People are actually reading about him on a quiet bank holiday.
Can't give it to Trent, can we?
No, we can't.
No. Not sure. Go on.
The answer is Torrendo, isn't it?
Oh, of course, yeah.
I saw someone tweet earlier saying, "Do you know who isn't leaving for Real Madrid?" Torrendo.
Well, yeah, that's very true. Yeah.
Yeah. First start of the season in the Premier League yesterday. Bossed it in a 3-1 defeat. I love the man.
The Japan captain in our team. That's the fans
yeah,
dancing.
Yeah.
Just a boy from Japan who's living the dream.
Yeah.
Him. And to be fair, Ryan Gravenberch announced some nice news this week, didn't he, that is that they're expecting.
Yeah.
So that's nice for him. So who do you want to give it to?
Go on, we'll give it to Endo then.
Endo.
First Premier League start, and it was the best of a ordinary bunch.
Yeah. Congratulations. Right. Well, in that note, we'll be back on Friday.
Yes.
No pods before then, Ian? Liverpool.com are recording tomorrow, so tune in for that. And then you'll be back on Friday with a special guest. Do you want to tell us a bit more about that? Because I'm not going to be here Friday. So
So we've got Dan Nicholson, who is of Boss Night fame, who's coming in to have a little natter about the season and Arsenal and whatever else is happening, Trent, and also to talk about the Red weekend that's set for the day before the Crystal Palace game, and there's loads going on with loads of special appearances from the likes of Kenny Dalglish and Rafa Benitez, and Dan will be able to tell us a lot more about that on Friday.
Brilliant. Well, Trent might be leaving, and
You are too.
yeah, I'm going to Bayern Munich, but Liverpool are still the champions. Our glasses of Carabao are always half full. So we'll be back on Friday for another good pod. Thank you very much for all your comments. Like, subscribe. Please send me an email with your questions if you'd like us to ask questions on the Blood Red podcast, joe.rimmer@reachplc.com. And we will see you tomorrow with Liverpool.com and on Friday. See you then. Ta-ra.